As I am diving into the first season of Severance and giving the most detailed and dedicated study of each wondrous episode, I found myself stuck in episode 5. Also, I wanted to do a little fun holiday video for all of my inspiring subscribers. Happy Halloween. Now, let's overthink a painting from a TV show about a healthy work-life balance. The grim barbarity of optics and design. The 5th episode carries this title, and it comes from this painting here. Shortly after the scene plays out, we learn that this was a ploy by Mr. Milchick.
Sorry, Irving. We must have sent this print job here by mistake. You weren't supposed to see this.
You ran a 266 on Irving B?
Yeah. Just now.
Right before this, two things happen to Irving. He starts to snooze and see the ooze, and he scans this map. And it gets this nightmare scene of O&D murdering MDR. When these two are discussing the operation he just ran on Irving, it seems pretty likely that it relates most to the printer spooler Q injection, where he sent his print job to take priority over the active user's action. But it could also relate to him seeing the black ooze at his desk. For a few reasons, I don't think that is where Mr. Milchick started intervening, though we do also see him catch Irving dozing the first time we ever see it, so Mr. Milchick has been in both scenes, so maybe that is something to investigate later. With what we know right now, it feels like the dozing isn't something that Mr. Milchick was actively involved in, and his mission got the internal all systems go when Irving started talking vocally about going to O&D once again.
I thought it might dissuade him from spending so much time with Bert G.
This moment in the first season was the first direct acknowledgement that management was behaving this way. It showed the extent in which they were actively monitoring and doing weird things like sending snuff porn as a way to prevent departments from interacting. But what's strange is that they have been highlighting this monitoring for a few episodes now. In the background, we can see all of these cameras being shown over and over again, and again, you do this for a reason. Episode 4 was the best example of this, when our heroes believed that they were operating in the shadows, and clearly they were not. Since we know how Miss Cobell and Mr. Milchick are willing to play these mind games with their employees, it also makes me wonder why he left the UUR on this seat for them to find and has not gone to retrieve it after so many of the workers have been reading it in what they believed to be private hidden moments, but more on that a little bit later. The main point of this video is to understand this.
That's not O&D, Dylan. It's us.
Okay, but we've never done anything like that. Why the hell would there be two versions of the same painting?
This painting is called the Macro Data Refinement Calamity, and it was never put in rotation. And that's the biggest clue about what's going on here and who is being impacted by the off-putting management practices. This painting not going into rotation means that it was only ever there for O&D. It was only ever there for the department that manages the propaganda for all of the other severed workers, which is just my theory. That is what I think O&D does, but we'll see in season 2. I think that it was here so that they could be influenced and propagandized as well. Optics and Design was given a haunted scene of themselves being murdered by Macro Data, and Macro Data was given the story that we've been hearing from Dylan for a few episodes now, that this is Optics and Design like coming to stage a violent coup and tried to kill MDR at some point in their past. Dylan is never able to cite where this ridiculous thought of a murderous moment comes from, but I think we can confidently say they came from Mr. Milchick and other management, very carefully poisoning the well for some reason. Before the events in the show, Mr. Milchick must have been making little comments, leaving little notes, doing tiny little things that highlighted this, of all things, as a possibility, like a little thought in the back of your mind, and he just reinforced it as a thought in the back of your mind over and over again until you believed it.
Egg drop challenge. You buy this fucking shit?
And what are you guys doing?
Police. Macro dads are clever and true, while O&D's more cruelty-centered.
This also forms in O&D in episode 5 when we learn about MDR being larva-controlled Muppets.
It's literally silly. Like they say, you all have pouches. You each have a larval offspring that will jump out and attack if we get too close. It's a joke, of course, but I don't know. The sentiment, somehow holds. People are weird.
He details that the majority of his team doesn't trust MDR because of a long-standing rumor or joke or, something that just formed this general discomfort around that team. And I think We can cite the painting constantly being in their possession as one of the reasons for that. If Dylan had the optics and design painting in his possession since the start of the show, this scene here...
Hi, Irving.
Hi, Bert. What are you doing
Exactly
here?
how the wet fuck do you know where this
Dylan.
office is?
may have been him just going full on attack mode on Bert because he so passionately believed the danger to be real, but he doesn't, and he didn't have that painting until, he didn't even know it existed until this moment. And that is because management is expertly controlling the strings here. They created a system that makes the majority of O&D hide from the world, and Dylan be this self-assured mouthpiece for why they should avoid the other team entirely. The very core of the plot that is going on here is that management cannot let the departments interact, and I think that's where we need to speculate. So again...
Why the hell would there be two versions of the same painting?
Well, clearly, there are strength in numbers. And because we have just so clearly learned the games that management is willing to play in order to convince what is essentially slave labor to act right, that is only going to last until the facade is removed and they overthrow the people that are messing with them and controlling them and forcing them to work. So you play more games to prevent that from happening. Dylan's entire existence is the Kier handbook, this cubicle, the work, the incentives for the work. On the surface, he doesn't need a dark mystery that O&D are the bad guys, and the only way he could have even thought of that is if someone or something tipped him off about that being possible. Even this story is another system of control that prevents management from getting the focus for his terrible existence. Irving received the grim barbarity of optics and design and was given this off-putting denial of its validity by Mr. Milchick so that he would go and share it with Dylan and further confirm the danger that they are in. Optics and design had the macro data refinement calamity for the exact same reason, never realizing that management placed it there and never gave the order to hang it for any reason at all. It was solely there to make them consider this as a possibility. So to answer the question plainly, the reason there are two paintings is because management cannot let the other teams become too buddy-buddy, either because they are going to outright revolt, maybe something has happened historically with this, or because the natural state of humanity being social will make them realize that they can better advocate for their own needs and will ultimately overthrow management anyway. It's curious that Ricken's book, which so passionately holds these values, was read either in whole or in part by Mr. Milchick and then left and seemingly forgotten about when we know they are proactively monitoring everything that goes on here. So to me, this scene...
I'm sorry, should I have consulted you?
...shapes Mr. Milchick as that go-getter, that initiate that wants to do good and doesn't always look for permission for perceivably gray areas of management, right? I think the reason he sent that painting after observing the relationship forming between Bert and Irving, after leaving the book for the team to find and read without ever stopping them, after also confirming that they are watching them intimately, is because he is looking at Miss Cobell in the same way that Miss Cobell is looking at everybody else. He is playing a long and covert game, perhaps making a play for her job or general advancement in the company, since we do see her fired before the end of the season because things went wrong, and that is never properly detailed. It seems like he is, again, playing a masterful Game of Thrones, and for the same reasons, the paintings and the stories of violent coups were created to avoid direct blame at the true oppressors. He is using that deceptive cloak of invisibility in order to control his higher-ups. Miss Cobell, much like Dylan, was so concerned with the scary story of what was happening on a severed floor that she did not realize the true threat until it was too late. Also, I just love that a printer is being used as a menacing system of workforce control. Anybody that has ever worked an office job can attest to how infuriating printer issues can be when you're trying to, exist and do work, right? So a boss being able to harass you like this is actually a nightmare. I love that. But with that, we come to the end of the video. Have a wonderful holiday today. Throw some candy at small children. Have a happy Halloween. And be sure to check out more Severance content on this channel if you want to think about all the big things happening in the show. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.